Is everyone ready for some cat content? Very good. Good. Let's do a bit of a time travel. So, my name is Andreas. I'm a cat owner. I'm a data scientist. And it's September 2015 in Munich, and it's a Munich Datageeks meetup at a Stylight, which was mentioned earlier today. So a couple of things changed since then, right? Twitter sort of died. But more importantly, we are now celebrating the 100th meetup of the Munich Datageeks, for which I would like to again congratulate the entire organizers for keeping up that wonderful community. I'm certainly not the guy who was here 73 times, but I always like to come back and it always feels home, so thanks for making that. Now, good. Now, what are we doing? So, I talked about my Catflap back then, and I will do this talk again. I almost didn't change it. I just added a couple of things that happened since. And basically, I maybe want to prove to myself that the Catflap didn't get boring. You are the ones to judge. So it's over 10 years of Purr-sistence. That's the only hint of generative AI you'll find in that talk. We're done with Gen AI here. So that's me, 2015. I don't want to bore you with the text on the left. A couple of things changed since then. I got a slight makeover in the meanwhile. My employer back then changed the logo. Game of Thrones came and went with a terrible disappointment. I changed hobbies, maybe eating too much. Corona came and went, and so came and went some styles. I switched my employer to IFCO. I changed my hobbies again, more like handy working at home in the meanwhile. Changed the looks again, and well, this is the short story probably on myself. Started programming fairly early. In 2015, I gave a talk at some meetup, and then I became pretty good at all kinds of different data things. In the meanwhile, I'm working for IFCO. As I said, I'm working to, well, improve the food supply chain sustainability by making our over 400 million assets turn faster, safer, and we're losing less. And it's a pretty fun thing. But that's not the talk, so let's introduce you to the real main character here, which is Mika. Mika is my wife's and my cat. This is when he was pretty young, so he's grown older since. He's born in 2012, actually, and the cat belonging to my mother gave birth to two small cat cubs, one Mika, one Casimir. And unfortunately, they got separated because Mika had to move in 2013 from Aschaffenburg to Munich. And now, in Aschaffenburg, he always could get out, and he would be let out. In Munich, he was suddenly sitting in a house, in a home, ground floor, luckily. But he and also my back then girlfriend, now wife, got pretty annoyed that they always had to open the door or had to wait that the door opens. And obviously, there's a solution to it, right? Cut a hole somewhere and, buy a Catflap. So that's what we did. We didn't buy any Catflap. We bought the largest one available because back then already Mika was pretty strong. So it's not a Catflap, it's a pet flap if you search for that. So small dogs fit also. Okay, pretty easy, put that flap into the wall, and then Mika can enter, and the other cats can't because it's a smart device. It has NFC, and because our cat is a cyborg, we could save him to the flap, and then only he could enter. And our neighbor's cat Franzel, who unfortunately died in the meanwhile, that's a bit sad, could not enter. So good. We got the flap. Cat's happy. Wife's happy. Let's see. Well, now there's a problem that you don't exactly know where your cat is. And if you do have pets, or if you do have children, you know that you would like to know where they are, because you want to be sure that they are safe. So the physicists will hate me for that, but we do have sort of a Schrödinger's cat problem here, right? You don't exactly know what the cat is. And I apologize for that. Good, so technology. First prototype, put a board into the shutter and attach a Raspberry Pi to it and attach some cabling to it, and I will get to where this is. And then, of course, pay someone €600 to cut a hole into a glass and put the flap into it. So you don't need to keep the door open all the time and freeze. Nice. So how does it work? Pretty simple. You have two sensors, two read sensors, the green and the red one. Apologize to all the people in the audience who can't see that right. And put a magnet on the flap. And then whenever the magnet passes over one of the sensors, basically you get a pull-up in one of the pins on the Raspberry Pi. And you can measure that, or you can process that with a simple Python script. And then, back then, this was like hot. I don't know, put it into a CouchDB and send it to the phone by an app, which is, by the way, still in the Play Store, which is called Push Bullet. So you can send notifications to various devices you have. Good. Implement some state machine that basically keeps waiting. Then, when the sensor is active, collect some data. And when the sensor is not active for some time, do cool down, save the stuff, send the notification. This generates this kind of patterns, 0, 1s, and sometimes 2. And from this pattern, you can derive, was the flap open to the outside or was it open to the inside? And then you, back then, right, as a young data scientist, you do some fancy pattern recognition. So the first thing that you recognize when it's going outside, it's a 1. When it's going inside, it's a 2. Pattern recognition, nice. Detect the longest 0 segment, because that's your passage, right? That is when actually Mika passes through the flap. And you basically cut these out, you store these, you convert your signals per second, to some seconds measure, and then you can do some stuff. Problem is, data's normally dirty, like you experience in your daily jobs, I guess, as well. So you need to do a bit of more cleaning, do like pattern length, the tail length, so that's the end of the segment, the longest and the longest 0 segment for the pass through, and then you can have that, and in the end you can send the messages. This is how it looked like back then. Right, so you just send the pattern in the notification. That's because that's nerdy. Good. Let's see what we can do with that. So, let's analyze some data. First, of course, now you get notifications, and cat's happy, so a bit of cat content for you guys. I don't know why he does that. Right. So he's still sometimes sleeping like this. Okay. So this is what the daily pattern of passages looks like. So it seems like he's pretty active in the early morning and then more or less active in the afternoon. Pretty much what you would expect probably from a cat that doesn't have a day job. And there is a difference in weekends. So he still takes weekends. But the opposite. On weekends he's more active, obviously. And that's probably because back then there was no home office, if someone remembers. we were actually not around during the normal weekdays. So he just got bored and probably slept. Interesting thing is, when you look at this across the weekdays, the thing wears off, right? When you look at Sunday, it's still pretty active during the day. Monday, still a little bit. Tuesday, still a little bit, and then it dies off. Basically, he's sleeping throughout the day, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then Saturdays he's back on. So, what else does he like to do? He likes to come home before we go to bed, which is smart because that's probably the last time on the day he's getting something to eat from us. But also after, or even worse, right before we wake up. So and then you can think about causality, right? Is it us that triggers him coming in, or is it him that triggers us waking up? Never checked that. And then at night, he's a cautious guy, right? You see that during the night when he goes out, so this measures basically the durage of the passage. He's a bit more careful when he goes out. So the passages during the night look like as if he would wait a little longer and stare a little longer before he actually leaves or enters. And I think that's only outgoing passages. So last thing on the data analysis here. He actually is pretty immune to temperature, looks like. So the passage duration really doesn't change a lot when you look at air temperature, and also you don't see any pattern when you look at humidity. So basically, I mean, he's got fur. Works for him. Very good. That sort of brings me to the end of the presentation back then, which we did a bit of a speed walk through. So Mika survived, and as I now learned, the significant other approval parameter increased quite a lot for new technology that I wanted to buy. Speaking of which, there is, so this is now where the old talk ended, and then let's see what happened since, okay? So there are 3 changes in the meanwhile. First one was a hardware revolution and a little bit of machine learning. So my plan, I don't know, I seemingly got bored in 2019, 2020. Maybe some ideas why that happened. I wanted to minimize the setup for whatever reason, maybe to get that ugly big Raspberry Pi away from the Catflap. I wanted to attach it in a smaller version directly to the flap, because before I needed always to crouch under the cupboard. I wanted to make the sensors pluggable, because it was always, they were sticked on it, and then when something accidentally happened, they were basically pulled out, and I had to basically measure the pins again, and it was, let's say, it was production ready, right? And I had a project back then, which is, cats are going for prey, and Mika loves to bring us presents. So I thought about, okay, it would be cool if you could lock the door when Mika brings a mouse or a bird or whatever he finds. And then I thought about, hey, cool, maybe others have the same problem. Let's program an open source package. The last thing never happened. I started and it died. Okay, so hardware upgrade. It got a camera on top, which is super nice. And now the lighting, I think, is like not the best here for this, but I mean, you can see it sort of in the middle. We now would get video footage when Mika approached, which was cool. Also, I built myself a little bit of a labeling application, so I could prepare my machine learning model for when to lock the flap. Setup is pretty simple. So just attach the video bus to to the Raspberry Pi, and basically that's it. Nothing else changed. But the software setup changed a little bit. So we now went from this CouchDB to MQTT, Motion on the Raspberry Pi for the image recognition, Node-RED for the pattern processing, Firebase for the storage, and Telegram for the notifications, which was nice because with the Telegram bots you could just do these buttons that you can click, and then they call a webhook, and then you can process the feedback, which you couldn't do on the other app. So hardware upgrade, but also a bit of change in software and a bit of change in looks. So this is now then what it looked like. The patterns were not this ones and zeros and twos anymore, but they had a visual representation, and you could see them in the Telegram chat being submitted, including again these buttons that highlighted: is he going in, is he going out, or was the pattern for some reason invalid? And then I could again press on that, give label data to my small MLP, and then basically the pattern recognition back then wasn't done by looking at the ones and looking at the twos and looking at the scale, but it was fed to an MLP, and that basically told me, okay, what are we looking at? Was a nice small thing to do back then. However, the idea of locking the door to avoid Mika in Prey never really got popular with my stakeholders. So by that, data collection, analysis, machine learning did not matter so much anymore. But of course, reliability and optics do. So start with reliability. There were quite a couple of stitched together things here. Second thing is software revolution. So, probably people doing like smart home stuff may know that I got into Home Assistant, which is a complete different rabbit hole, I can tell you. So that meant upgrade of the stack, right? Good. Throw out Firebase, throw out Telegram, throw out, I think that's mostly it, and basically now do this. So MQTT now sends the video snippets to Frigate. Frigate, I forgot that, has a direct connection also, of course, from the Raspberry Pi. That goes into Home Assistant, and now the third app, which sends me notifications, which is now not only when it happens, but also in the Home Assistant companion app, you can basically see the status of all the household members and where they are. Super nice. That being done, that was roughly, what did I say in the earlier slide? Yeah, 2020 to 2024, so small steps. The last step was hardware commoditization. And that happened because we moved from Trudering to the beautiful small town of Ottobrunn. Mika obviously wasn't happy about that. And I can give you some pro tips if you ever plan to install a Catflap. Keep the original glass around, because if you move out, you may want to put it back in place. We did that, so pro tip. And of course, there's another glass door you can cut a hole in. Interestingly, the prices for cutting holes in glass didn't change so much from 2014 to 2024. So something where inflation sort of made I don't know. But of course now, 10 years later, there's like super good hardware out there that you can buy, which just does everything for you, and you don't need to, do that yourself anymore. So you buy the Catflap Connect, which increases the soap even more because it doesn't have any wires attached to it anymore, right? And you have to purchase the SurePad Hub. And those communicate together, so it's pretty easy to set up. And I have to say, for the Catflap, or for the Catflap itself, the hardware that SurePad creates, and I'm not getting paid for that, it's really good hardware. I mean, the other flap is still working. It's working in a different area, another story, but the flap hardware is pretty good. What shall I say about the hub? So it works through the cloud, as you can see. It has an own app to it, and the good thing is it integrates nicely with Home Assistant, which I checked before, so everything keeps working as it was, but there was like now a lot less technology. Downside is camera does not work anymore, so no images, but we solved for that by other means. So we are finally there now, right? Fully commoditized, done, boring, it just runs. We can go home or do other interesting projects. Or are we? Well, you maybe guessed from the tone, it's cloud dependent. You don't want to do that for a critical system. For a real critical system, right? Where life and death depends on. And then there's like that 1 minute delay to get the data into Home Assistant, which is just awful. And then there's another app that you have to manage that sends notifications. And by the way, there is also a winter garden that called for a second Catflap. Yeah. Nice. So back to hack. This last summer, second non-smart Catflap in the winter garden, like a bit of a hacked thing itself, as you can see from the cuts that we had to make. But then basically the same principle as the good old OG Catflap, and just this time using a Shelly door window sensor where you can just basically solder a longer read sensor with cables on and then just remove the one that is built in the small device, and then you can have that. And now we have 2 Catflaps that send us messages. Nice. And for the hub, that's a very recent thing, so probably around the time Torsten texted me. So experimenting now with reverse engineered local hub on an ESP32 to basically replace the shitty hub here. I can't really go into so much more because it's like very early and it's looking all really pieced together and didn't make it here in the presentation, but probably that's the future. So luckily the Catflap didn't get boring, at least for me, and I also hope it didn't get boring for you. So basically this is how it looks now, or this is how it should look in the future. I always brag this is a production system since August 2014. Let's check it again on the 200th meetup. Would be very interested in hearing your questions. And of course, greetings from Mika. Nothing better to end your presentation with a cat.